Chatters, chatties, welcome home for a Great American Chat, a podcast where we chat about great American media. I'm Chad Maurice, and today I am honored. I have a special guest in the house, author, TV host, DIY expert, chef, baker. I'm telling you, she does it all. Please welcome Maria Provenzano. Maria, thank you so much for being here.
Oh my goodness, what an intro. Thanks for having me.
Yes, no, I have to apologize. Normally I have a green screen background behind me, and today I had a Great American Community picture behind me, but for some reason my green screen wouldn't work today.
Well, you
The
know what?
video
I just figured out how to use this.
to blur it? Oh, that's what I should have done. I should have blurred my background. So I just got this boring plain wall behind me today. But anyway, before we get talking about the Great American Community app and your show, Everyday Celebrations, first I want to talk about you. Where did you grow up?
So I am from a town in Michigan called Saginaw, and born and raised there. My parents were born and raised there, and my dad's side of the family is originally from Italy, so he is a second generation American, and so grew up there. Had if you think of watching all of these great American family movies, the town I grew up in was basically like that, so it's a small town, very, close community, very sweet, Friday night football games, all that type of thing. And then I went to college in Florida. I thought, it might be fun to go somewhere new and different. And I had a bunch of cousins in Florida, so I thought it'd be just go somewhere where I didn't really know anybody. And my sister was there, so something, a little bit of a challenge. So I went to Florida State, and I definitely missed Michigan a lot of the time. I would go back to Michigan in the summers and do theater there at a university called SVSU, which is Saginaw Valley State University, which was probably one of my favorite college experiences, was actually going back to Saginaw and doing theater there at the university in Saginaw. And then ended up graduating, getting my Bachelor of Arts from Florida State, and then in theater, and then moved out to LA after that at 19 years old. Oh, sorry, not 19, 20. I was 22. Oh my God, math. That's how old I am. I got my eyes checked today. I'm telling you. And I'm like, I've officially entered the phase of my life where I need all the help I can get. But yeah, so I went out to LA at 22.
So you went to school in Gainesville, right?
Tallahassee.
Tallahassee.
University of Florida.
I'm getting them mixed up. Okay, you went to Tallahassee.
If you would have told me another college in another state, I would have said the wrong thing. So Florida State's in Tallahassee.
So that was my next question. I was going to ask you how you got from Michigan to Hollywood. So you left Florida right out of college and just moved to California.
Yeah, I knew my whole life that I wanted to be on television. Growing up in a small town, because honestly, the only thing that really would have ever taken me away from, the town that I really, and state that I really love, and my family that I love so much that's still there, really was my passion. And I loved my whole life. I've loved entertainment. I've always loved watching TV and watching movies. And, I've always, it resonates with me because I've just always been a creator. And I think that's why I think, I love the Great American Family movies so much, because they're so happy, and they're so, because entertainment makes us feel a certain way. Right. And when I was growing up, no one did lifestyle content besides Martha Stewart. So for me, I loved entertainment. I loved being creative. And in that space, it really was only, television and movies. And I loved TV and movies. I mean, that was just what I gravitated to. So I knew my whole life that that's what I wanted to do. And, but growing up in a small town, you don't really have much access to any of that. So my whole life I was like, I'm going to move to LA, I'm going to live in Hollywood and be an actress. And so that's what I ended up studying. My parents were like, that's great. So you need to get an education. And we're not going to, let you just up and go out to LA by yourself. And to be honest, that was the best decision. They guided me down the right path. I'm so happy it happened the way that it did. And so, I was able to study theater at Florida State. I did a lot of, there's a really great film school and theater school at Florida State. So I was able to do film and theater when I was there. So a lot of on-camera work. So I felt like when I went out to LA, and I did an internship in the summer before my senior year out in LA. So I was able to live out there for a little bit. I went to UCLA. I was at the UCLA campus and I
Oh,
worked at a
okay.
casting office. So I got to like dip my toe a little bit into the industry to make sure it was something that I really wanted to do instead of like
Uh-huh.
up and leave. And and I think any experience is a good experience, but that way I was able to experience it without doing a full plunge.
Right.
And of course I've been here since I was 22 and I haven't gone back. So
And
yeah.
and doing that internship, were you able to make some connections in the entertainment
Absolutely. So
industry? Yeah.
when I did my internship, it was a very small casting office. I'm still good friends with the owner of the casting office, and but then went back and did my senior year at Florida State, and then the summer when I moved out to LA, I was able to get a job at that casting office. So when I came out to LA,
Oh,
I was
that's
able to
good.
have a job, and I had that way I knew some people that were
Uh-huh.
living in Hollywood and doing all the things. And the casting director was wonderful that I worked for because she knew I wanted to be an actress. It wasn't
Uh-huh.
like a secret. She would be like, if we were getting people on tape for certain things and she thought I was right for it, she would let me audition for it.
Uh-huh.
So that was also really helpful too.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay. Because yeah,
And yeah.
it takes guts to move to California when you don't know anybody there, you have no connections, but you had a job set up already when you went out there?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
I mean,
good.
not a very high paying job, I'll tell you
Right,
that.
right,
I was working in
right.
restaurants at night. I
Uh-huh.
would work at the casting office during the day
Hmm.
and then work at restaurants at night, as most
Hmm.
actors do.
Right.
But I also think working in the restaurant industry is, um, I think honestly, both of my kids, I have two boys. I think it's important for all kids, and I think all people that live in this country should experience the other side of the restaurant industry to some extent. When I was a
Yeah.
theater major, all the theater geeks work at coffee shops. So I worked at a
Hmm.
coffee shop in college. I worked
Hmm.
at the I'm sorry, I worked at the film school at Florida State too. So I've always had
Hmm.
jobs that would kind of like help educate me in what I was doing. But the funny thing is, working in restaurants and working at coffee shops, I never realized that would eventually affect my future career in
Yeah.
doing lifestyle content.
Uh-huh.
And what's so funny about that is, even when I was in college, the lifestyle jobs were not existent. There would be some people who would be on, let's say, the morning shows, the national morning shows doing lifestyle content. And a lot of times it was big names like Martha Stewart or someone who was like the CEO or the editor in chief of like Good Housekeeping or something like that. But those jobs were never a thing. And when I
Uh-huh.
was in college, I mean, this is something I've done my whole life. My mom was a Martha Stewart. She taught me how to cook and bake and sew. My grandpa, coming, from an Italian family, food is our life. Like everything is centered around food. At dinner, you're talking about breakfast. At breakfast, you're talking about lunch. Like every meal, you're talking about your next meal. So
Uh-huh.
my life was always filled with food and creativity. And I just never thought of that being able to be a career. And I always loved Martha Stewart. I always loved reading cookbooks. And my
Hmm.
mom and I helped her with every single holiday.
All
My
right.
mom
Speaking
would
of your
decorate.
mom,
Yeah.
speaking of your mom, hold on. Hold on. There we go.
Yes. Look at you. You came prepared. There she is. I know see, that's my wedding. This is before I even like was doing anything on television, but these are called S cookies. They're Italian S
I
cookies.
was gonna say holy cookies. Those are a lot
Oh
of
yeah.
cookies. That's for
We
your
made
wedding?
that was for the favors for my wedding. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so they're Italian S cookies, and they are actually the recipe is my great aunt Zena's recipe, and we've never shared it because it's not our recipe to give, but that's her recipe. And but my mom has made it probably more than my aunt Zena ever has. My high school friends just this was their favorite thing my mom made, and we made it every year. So that's the thing that we would when we did our Christmas cookie boxes and things like that. But we had a full system. We would make cookies like these S cookies and we would put together these beautiful boxes. I mean, my mom was so on the cutting edge of any of this stuff before. Like if this happened, if like Pinterest and Instagram and all these things happened when my mom was my age, she would have for real been like an Instagram star. Like she she just did all this stuff and for her she didn't go online to get inspiration. These came out of her head. She would put together these baskets with like the plastic around it and like do the heat on it so it would like suck it all in. So it looked like these were professional gift baskets that you get from stores. And she
Uh-huh.
was doing it at home and it was something we always did. And I didn't know any different. And I knew it was special because I knew that a lot of people were so in awe of what she would do. And so for me, I'd always it felt special, but I didn't realize how much this was really influencing who I was and who
Uh-huh.
I, ultimately ended up who I was as an adult and in my career. But it was something that I mean, talk about true passion. This is what I literally am like. I'm like a hamster wheel. Like I'm literally always thinking of like what I can be making, what I can be doing with food and creativity and making things special and that it's something I never turn off. It's like literally the wheels spinning in my brain all the time. And this is why, because it was something that I just always did. My mom, I mean, everything. She always would make homemade bread in like a little bread maker. And, on St. Patrick's Day, she would turn it green and be the only kid at lunch with like a themed St. Patrick's Day lunch. And like people do this all the time now, but people did not do this back in the 80s.
Uh-huh.
And I was, like I said, reading cookbooks, reading Martha Stewart magazine and all of those things. And then, you know, enter college. I was doing this in college. I would decorate my apartment and my roommates were like, they always laughed because they just knew that that's what I love to do. But I mean, I would do any themed, like if we had a holiday, I made food for it. I would decorate for it. I would like go to Target and get all these things. And it was so funny. Like I look back at that and I'm just like, man, I wish I would have documented some of those things a little bit better.
uh,
But now we have that. And all
well,
of yeah.
you answered my question. I was going to ask you how you became a DIY or DIY expert and a cook and a baker. Obviously, you learned it from your mom and from reading things. Wow.
Yeah, and it's something that I coming from a big Italian family and seeing the dinner table really as like food being the great connector. And all Italians, I have to tell you a funny story actually. Let me just this is a little bit of an off thing, but it's a funny story. All Italians like and I may be that might be a broad statement, but a lot of Italians, I mean, that's just the way that our culture works.
Oh
Food
yeah.
is really that great connector. I did a book
Hmm.
signing up in northern Michigan in one of my favorite towns called Petoskey, and
Hmm.
it's where my parents, have a place now. And so I did a book signing there at this adorable bookshop, and I had some of my cousins. So they're my let's see, they would be my second cousins, my dad's first cousins, and they're four loud Italian women who are just the best, and they come in and they just take the store by storm. Like that they entered, and which is like the best. Like that's my childhood, and they're so funny. They're talking to me about like these recipes and things my grandpa used to make, and they said to me, they're like, oh, and they're buying my cookbook and having me sign it, and they're like, oh, is the recipe? And I can't remember what they called it, but it was sort of like a caponata. But they had a different name for it. They're like, do you have the recipe for so and so in there? And I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't know this recipe. And they were like, oh my gosh, Grandpa Frank, or not Grandpa, sorry, Uncle Frank, which is my grandpa. Oh my God, words. Uncle Frank used to make this for us all the time. It's got this in it and this in it and this in it. And she goes, we got some in the car. And I was just like, oh my God. And I started laughing, like, oh, if that is not the most Italian thing I have ever heard. They're coming they drove 2 hours to my book signing and they have some like
they
caponata style food in the car
they
because
have food in the car.
God forbid you leave the house without some food. Oh my God, it's so funny. But that's an example of how that works. And, my mom is not Italian, my mom is German. So that's why she's such a baker. She's very precise and she's very, strategic. And so I have a little bit of that, like that Italian, my grandpa, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And my mom, who's super structured with baking and, lining everything up and everything's measured perfectly. So I think I have this nice sort of balance of the two. And that's why I
Uh-huh.
love to cook and I love to bake. And I think I'm very free with my baking too. Um, and so that to me, I think that's why I never get sick of it. I think that's why I find it so exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, were any of these recipes were they written down or were they just passed down from generation to generation, just taught from one generation to the next?
So most of them were passed down. That's a great question, by the way. Most of them were passed down generation by generation. And because of the
Hmm.
store that my grandpa had called Provenzano's, they just taught, the next generation, okay,
Uh-huh.
it's this much. And then they would have to start writing things down because they were bottling sauce before produced sauces were created.
Uh-huh.
So they had a sauce called J&R sauce after my great-grandparents, Jack and Rose. And so the J&R sauce was sort of this like
Wait, Jack
famous
and
comfort.
Rose, that's like from
I
the
know.
Titanic.
They were before Titanic. I know, it's so funny. I've told that story so many people crack up. I'm like, yep, they were J&R. And so J&R sauce, Jack and Rose. I have my Grandma Rose's like big stock pot that she would make the sauce in, and a big wood spoon, stuff like that. So they did ultimately end up having to write some of these things down that they sold at the store. Um, and some of those recipes, just because they had to teach people how to do it, and the people who were working there, and a lot of the people who worked in the store were family. However, as my grandpa got older, and he passed away at 92 years old, sharp as a tack, still made Thanksgiving dinner for everybody, still made Christmas dinner for everybody. And so as he started to get to probably his like late 80s, my parents and my dad's brothers and sisters had asked him to start writing his stuff down so that we could always have it, because it's one of those things where you just don't. So I do have a cookbook that my dad and his family, his brothers and sisters, put together with my grandpa Frank's recipes and some other recipes that were my grandma Grace's. My grandma Grace passed away when I was 1 year old, so I never got to really have the relationship with her that I had with my grandpa. My grandpa was a huge person in my life, and a huge influence on the reason I love the things that I love. And just, anyway, the funny thing is, like, I talk about him so much. He was not, he wasn't a big person. He wasn't like the Italians that you think, right? He didn't have this big personality. He didn't have, like, kind of like my dad. My dad has this big personality. He's always going to run up and hug you, and he's always got a lot to say. And he's like, da, 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 da. My grandpa was not like that. He was actually very quiet, and but he was very intelligent. He studied like all these, basically could have gone to medical school as a kid, studied math and science and all these things. So it was straight A's and got like everything was like, he was beyond smart, but he didn't have the money to be a doctor, didn't have the money to go to medical school, and it was just one of those things where they needed him at the store. His dad owned the store with his brothers, and then, my grandpa took the store on with his family. And so it was just one of those things, but the way his brain worked was very meticulous. And I think that's why he was good at what he did. And he was also a DIYer. If he wanted something, he built it. And he was like a DIYer. He wasn't a crafter. He like built stuff. As he got older, he wanted his garden beds to be raised, because as he got older, he couldn't bend down as much to garden. He loved to garden. I did not get that gene. My mom likes to garden too. I can't get mint to grow. I am the worst.
Mint.
But he wanted the raised beds, and he would build them himself. So that was just one of those things that I think, and that's that generation too. Like they just made things.
Yeah.
Nothing went to waste. And so anyways, that's how it all kind of like the through line of really the passion for the food and all of those things kind of came to be. And as I then, I was in the acting space, a lot of the hosting world became lifestyle centric.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like it was very kismet in how it all happened, because I would go on auditions and I would have people ask me, like, do you ever do any hosting? I'm like, enough people have asked me if I am in the hosting world that, like, I don't know if it's a good or bad thing. People are telling me. So I started to do actually some hosting classes, like how people do acting classes. They offer hosting classes out here. And I was like, might as well try it. And I started doing that. And like, that's weird. Like things like those morning shows had more lifestyle content on there. And they were starting to bring people on as like the social media world started to be bigger. They started to find lifestyle people that were not Martha Stewart and not good, good housekeeping, and bringing these people on. And it opened up this whole world to people who love to do this type of stuff. It's crazy.
So the casting directors at an audition would say to you, you're not right for this role, but I think you'd be a good TV host.
And I don't know if that meant like I was very like polished, and it's one of those things where I would do auditions, and like, yes, the person standing across the way, I'd be like crying and like doing whatever. And, and most of those conversations happen because when I would go into these rooms, and granted, I have a background in casting, so I know what these people are going through. I know the hamster wheel that they're on. I know they see the same. They've already seen 20 people who look just like me today.
Yeah.
And so I would go in and I would just start talking to them and like have a conversation and be like, oh, so blah, 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 blah. And just realizing like, I know what it's like to be on that side. And I would never say that, but
Mhm.
just knowing that they're bored out of their minds, they're looking for somebody who's going to be the right fit. And in the casting world, to be honest with you, sometimes it's like not the best actor doesn't always get the role. I've casted plenty of things where there were people who were so right for the job, in my opinion, but like the person who's like thing it was that they were, let's say it was an independent movie, they'd be like, no, she's too tall, or like, no, he looks like my ex-boyfriend. Like, one of those things. I'm like, ah. But yeah, so I think what I was doing, I think because I was talking to people so
Mhm.
much, and they would
Mhm.
say, and I think because I was a little bit more polished in my presentation, that they were like, "Do you ever get into hosting? You should be a host."
Well,
Well,
you
that's not
have
why I'm here.
well, you have the gift of gab, let me tell you.
That's like one
But that
problem I don't have. Yes.
but that's what you need. That's what you need to be a host. Now, your family, when you're talking about your family sounds like it could be a movie, because I've seen movies where someone in the family was trying to find an old recipe of one of their grandparents, or they were trying to recreate an old recipe that one of their grandparents used to make, and that sounds just like your family.
Well, Chad, you might have just given me an idea. Maybe this needs to be a great American family movie. That's not a bad
Yes.
idea. It is a dream of mine to one day write a movie that is about the store, my grandpa's store in a
Hmm.
small town. It's
Hmm.
all very, similar. I think that's why I fit in so well to this type of content, and with Great
Hmm.
American Family, I think that's why I feel so at home in
Hmm.
this space, because it is very much it's this is the type of content that I truly enjoy.
Hmm.
And when I watch these movies and I leave feeling happy, it's like this, the Great American Community app that's out there.
Hmm.
I'm
Hmm.
watching this type of content and it's happy and it's uplifting. And that
Yeah.
was one of my struggles when I was an actress. It was the constant content that I just didn't love to create. A
Right.
lot of it was
Right.
gore or,
Yeah.
and that's how I kind of transitioned out of the acting world. Was actually I met my husband. And because something about it no longer felt right to me.
Hmm.
Because of the content that I was being asked to do. Like you know, not that I'm going to judge anybody else, but like I'm not going to do the gore, and I'm not
Hmm.
going to do the stuff that's trampy. I'm not going to take
Hmm.
my clothes off. Like those are just things
Hmm.
I'm not going to do.
Hmm.
And I don't feel comfortable creating content that my parents can't see. I don't feel comfortable creating content that like my grandpa who was still alive, I would not be able to show him something,
Right.
So like for
Right.
me, I couldn't I I couldn't do it. And so when I met my husband, I mean, instantly knew I wanted to marry him from like literally the first date. And as our relationship grew, so did my career in the hosting space, because I started to slowly transition everything I was doing into the lifestyle content world, which was
Hmm.
such a gift, truly. And
Hmm.
yeah, so and it's crazy how like that whole thing ended up working out too.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I've gone on, or not gone on auditions. I've seen casting calls where they will say, this role is paying $20,000 for this small role, except full nudity is required
Yeah.
for this role. I'm like, yeah, forget that.
Yes. I just couldn't do it.
You can't sell your soul for money.
can't. And it's not
Yeah.
for me. Listen, I'm not going to judge other people's decisions, but for me, it just didn't feel right. And for
Hmm.
me, there was, and I think maybe that's because I do have that lovely, sacred relationship with my family.
Hmm.
And I just couldn't create
Yeah.
something that I
Yeah.
wasn't proud of, you
Hmm.
know?
Yeah. Yeah. Now we do have to talk about this crew here. Here are you with
Oh,
your cohorts from the cast of Home and Family.
yes.
I want to talk about this show. How did you get cast on this show? How'd that come about?
So, as I like mentioned, transitioned into doing these like hosting classes, and then the world of Pinterest, Instagram, all those things started happening. I created my own website. And initially it was mariaprovenzano.com. And I eventually, I wanted to have I wanted someone to land on my website and know exactly what they were going to get. And my husband actually, and he'll be the first to tell you this, he came up with the from scratch idea. And as I wanted to
Oh,
rebrand my site, so it wasn't just an actor's website that was just about
uh-huh.
my acting, it was
Right.
about my content. And I wanted it to, I loved from scratch because it was all encompassing of everything, right? Because I do food, but I also do crafts and DIYs. So from scratch, just it felt very like it just fit. So as I did my website and I started just putting my content out there, actually a girl who was a segment producer on the show, we she there it's a long like a little bit of a circle, but she became friends with one of the wardrobe girls who's like, "Oh, my friend creates content. You should look at her stuff." And our families ended up knowing each other. So actually my in-laws
Oh,
knew her family. And she looked at my stuff and she's like, "Oh my gosh, she's creating content that we need." So she was a producer in Home and Family. She pitched me, and actually I think she pitched me probably for a good year. Because
uh-huh.
mind you, I don't at this point have many followers, and there was no such thing as like a micro influencer at this point. Like every TV show wanted big names or people with like at least like half a million people following them
Uh-huh.
or something
Right,
like
right,
that.
yeah.
And there was just one day where the senior producer was like, I need to fill this spot. We need something fresh and different and blah, blah, blah. And this girl pitched me again. And she was like,
Oh.
well, I just saw on Maria's, I think it was Instagram or website, she did this Halloween thing and I think it could be really cute. And the senior producer was like, fine, let's just book her. It's fine. And like kind of didn't like make much of it. She's like, whatever. And so I'll never forget my first segment. And mind you, I have had some hosting experience in the world of like auditioning, but also creating like my own reels and things, or not reels, but like a hosting reel, not the reels that we think of now for Instagram, but like the things you send to like casting directors.
Yeah, yeah.
So I have experience, but no like on TV experience as a host.
Mhm.
So I just have the acting experience, and I've taken some classes and this and that. So I get the call that they want to book me on Home and Family
Mhm.
to do a segment, and they
Mhm.
want to do my Halloween bottle of booze, and it was just cute ways to decorate bottles of wine for Halloween, and it was just like a little play on words, a really easy DIY, and it's like something that you could customize. Doesn't have to be wine; it could be anything. Good way to wrap a gift essentially for Halloween. And so I remember I went there, I got to set, and I had a little green room. I went and did my segment,
Mhm.
and everything felt like it felt right place, right time. The way that everything went, it was one of those things where you leave like I couldn't have done it any better. At least in that moment, couldn't have done it any better. Couldn't have planned it any better. Everything was perfect, and it felt perfect, and I was so happy doing that type of thing. And it's a show that I loved, the type of content that I loved, and everybody was so wonderful there. So I did that segment. And then they asked me to come back again for a Christmas segment. And then they asked me to come back. So it was, and then they asked me to
Oh.
come back. And so I contributed on the show just as like a friend to the family
Mhm.
for I would say 2 years. And then they brought me on. So when Bill Abbott really took hold of the show and
Mhm.
made it a Hallmark show,
Mhm.
it was no longer a show that lived on Hallmark. It was a Hallmark show. And what Bill did to our show was just magnificent. Bill and
Mhm.
Tracy, when they took a hold of that show, it became, I mean, there is still nothing like that show on television. It
Right.
was such a happy, beautiful, uplifting show where you learned. I mean, I would sit there and watch the show when I was there. I mean, I wouldn't like go in, do my thing, leave. I would go in and it really, and I say this like my hand to God, this was a family. Everybody from like PAs to our executive producer, like everybody knew. I have goosebumps talking about it. Everybody knew everybody. Everybody knew each other's families. Everyone knows each other's stories. And it was magic. I honestly, I couldn't have picked a better situation to be in. We had creative freedom. We pitched our own ideas. I mean, every single thing, especially as a creator, you cannot ask for anything better. And the people that you're seeing in this photo, I mean, I love them. And some of them, I even have closer relationships with them than some people in my family. Like, that is, Larissa and I talk, for instance, all the time. We are like
Mhm.
sisters, and we will FaceTime like you and I are talking today for hours.
Mhm.
And it's just, the years and years that we've been through together. I mean, some marriages don't even last that long. And I mean, at that point, I was with them more than I was with my husband, more than I was with my kids. And so,
Mhm.
what that was really special. What Bill and Tracy did to that show was really special. It was smart, and
Mhm.
it was hands down one of the greatest experiences of my entire life.
Mhm. Now you mentioned Bill and how he took over the show. When he
Mhm.
left the network, were all of you worried? What were you thinking? Geez, what's going to happen to the show?
Absolutely. You saw it happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I think because, listen, when you work with Bill, you know his style, you know how smart he is, and you know that he is truly capable of navigating the waters of the world of television. And he has so much experience. He's so bright, and yeah, I think, listen, I've said from the very beginning, where I'm at now is where I'm comfortable. I was very comfortable in this space, on Hallmark. I was very comfortable talking about rainbows and sunshine and happy content,
Yeah.
and that to me, was very much so. Yeah, it was definitely, it wasn't a happy day for us when Bill had to leave.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. When the
Yeah.
axe finally came down, you got the news. Was everyone shocked, or were you
Yes.
expecting it?
Oh, I would, to be honest with you, I feel like I can only speak for myself, but from my experience, I was shocked.
You were shocked? Yeah.
Yeah, I was shocked, and I think, yeah, I think, it kind of like is all of it's a little bit of a blur, but yeah, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're all reunited now in the Great American Community Act,
Yes,
so that's exciting.
it is
Now,
exciting.
now, Home and Family was filmed on the Universal Studios lot. Here you are on the lot. How fun was it to drive onto this lot every day for work?
So when I, think back to my childhood, when I told you I would watch television and be
Uh-huh.
like, all I want is to be on TV. All I want is to, like, play pretend and make magic and all of those things that you do feel like you get on television. I mean, every day. It did not get wasted on me driving onto that set. So the way that I would drive to set, I would always see the Hollywood sign going into the set, and the Universal lot is incredible. It is awesome. It's literally every single thing that I could have ever dreamed of as a child. Entering that, it was heaven to me, because this is the type of stuff we got to do. We would walk around. There's like a whole New York area. Me and my friend Orly would, take outfit photos and stuff in New York, depending on what we were wearing.
Ah,
Um,
that's funny.
yeah, there was this guy named Brian who helped us out on set. To say he was an assistant does not even do him justice, because he was more than an assistant. He was, our right hand person to all of us, and his role on the set was I I think is he was technically an assistant, but he did. I mean, he could have been our therapist. He could have been our, all of the things. So he would go with us every day and do photos and do these things. And I think it's really those experiences together were the most memorable too. So
Hmm.
fun.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm sure it was. I'm sure it was. Now, you originally started out to be an actor, and
Mhm.
I know you've done a couple films.
Oh my!
Is that
These
no? Is that you on the left?
four I was talking about.
Is that you on the left?
Yep. So this was a vampire movie.
This was called
You dug
Vamps,
deep.
right?
I'm literally blushing. This is called Vamps. Yeah, you can see like the
Man,
crazy makeup I had.
girl, you are rocking those thigh high stockings. I got to tell you.
Perfect example for why I got out of the acting space. Two things. It's like the outfit, the gore. But, oh my god, how funny.
Whoa! Now, was your character a vampire in this thing, or what?
So
You think so?
I had to have. I honestly, I don't even remember. I don't think I had. I think I might have had a line or two. This was an independent film, and had a couple lines. I honestly don't remember. I don't
Was
remember the
this
storyline either. I think I
was this
shot one day.
was this a full length feature or a short?
This was, I think it was a short.
I think it
The
was a
funny thing
short.
is the girl who created this, I worked with her at the casting office, and she was super into gore, like loved gory movies. And
Yeah.
she asked me to be, I didn't even have to audition. Like she asked me to be a part of this. And she just recently sent me a text to say happy birthday. I haven't talked to her in probably 7 years. And she sent me a text and she's like, we need to get together, blah, blah, blah. And this was her brainchild. It was like the guy who is in the middle, he worked at the casting office too.
Ah,
It was like a bunch of us from the casting office.
yeah.
And oh man,
That's funny.
perfect
That's
for
funny.
Halloween.
Yeah, perfect for this time of year. Now you did another
Oh,
film here. You had a small role in this one called Random Encounters back in 2013. Now Meghan
oh,
Markle starred in this. Were you able to meet her at all?
nope. I did
No,
not meet her. I
no.
just did I did one day. This was actually a really fun day. And I kind of got to do a little dumb blonde moment, which is always a fun role to do. So I was a girl auditioning. So that was my role.
Ah,
So I think the way the story goes is she was an actress and doing he was running an audition to see if she would like come in for this part. And so in this sort of like montage, there's like, they show 5 or 6 girls auditioning and kind of like a stereotype for LA, girls wanting to be actresses, going in auditioning. And so I actually, it was a really fun day. So that was, yeah, a single day. I think this, what year would this have been? 09?
2013, IMDb said.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
13. No, it wouldn't have been 13 because
I mean,
my
that's when
oldest
it was
one,
released. Maybe it
yeah,
was
no, it
filmed
must have been
before
when it
that.
released. Yeah, yeah, yeah. When we
Yeah,
filmed it, oh my gosh, I had to
yeah.
have been 9 or 10 because
Oh, okay.
my oldest baby was born in 13. And there
Oh,
is no,
okay.
I was definitely past
Okay. All right.
doing any other stuff when I had my baby. Oh my
Okay.
God, that is so funny.
Okay. Now, also in this movie was Michael Rady. Now, when you worked for Hallmark, did you and Michael ever cross paths and say,
We
"Hey,
did.
we worked in that movie together"?
For me, which I don't blame him. There's a lot of like, it was one of those things when you go to like a movie, who the people who are the leads, but like then there's all these people who have small roles.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
but yeah, so I don't even know if he remembers this conversation, but I said something to him. I go, I know this is totally out there, but just so you know, a million years ago, I had like a small role in this one movie, and I couldn't even remember the name of it. And I remember when this thing did pop up. You're right; it was many years after we had shot it. I remember somewhere it popped up, and someone had mentioned something to me, like, "Oh, I saw something that you were in. You were an auditioning girl auditioning." So funny.
That's great. That's great. Now, here you are in Times Square this past summer. There you are with Michael and Amy. How fun was this?
This was like the epitome of like dreams coming true. So obviously being on Home and Family, 100% like my dream job, 1,000%. Doing a morning show where I create content.
Uh,
Now, when I talk about the national morning shows, these are the ones that I watched my whole life.
mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
I would, sit there and pretend that I would say, "Good morning, America." And so when I got the call, something that we haven't brought up just yet was that I did write a cookbook.
Oh, well, I was
Um,
going to talk about that. You were on
yes,
Good
so
Morning
that's
America to promote
yes,
your book. Yeah,
promote the book. So that's
right.
why this is sort of all encompassing.
Yeah.
This moment in particular was all
Mhm,
encompassing for me. So it was the many years that I put in to my career, doing something that I absolutely love. Um, you know, Thanks to Bill Abbott, really, for bringing me on as a full-time lifestyle expert on Home and Family. I really do have him to thank for, him and Tracy for
mhm,
giving me that career and
mhm,
trusting me that I'm capable of that career. And it
mhm.
was with that job that I was able to get this book picked up. It's with Harper Horizon, which is a division of HarperCollins. So we pitched this book. Me and my literary agent pitched this book um, right, like probably 2 weeks after lockdown. When we had
Oh,
like the 2 weeks, we put together the pitch in the 2 weeks, and then we put the pitch out there, and it got picked up by Harper Horizon. And then it took 2 years for it to come out and that's not uncommon for books. It took a little
mhm,
longer because of supply chain issues, but um, this book was very much in line with is all encompassing, I should say, of all of the work I had done over the past, let's say, decade. And so, because these huge morning shows are really the content that I love, when I got the call that Good Morning America was talking to my publicist and asked if I could come, it was truly, truly a dream come true. And I didn't know that my book was going to be up on the screen in Times Square either.
Yeah.
And so that, to me, like, that day, I'll never forget it. I'll never forget how calm I felt in the moment and how right it felt. I think one of those things, when we get things that we ask for, right? We ask to write a cookbook. We're sitting here saying, like, dear God, I would love to have this career. Please, like, arm me with the ability to do this. Please let me be worthy enough to have this job that I love so much. All of those things that we, quote unquote, ask for to have in our life, we also obviously work for, but we ask for them. And I remember feeling in this moment, like the one you see me turning, feeling extremely, like, grateful, at ease, and having this overall, like, for me, I call it a connection to God, but having this connection to God where I took this breath, and it was sort of like, you've worked very hard for so long, you've earned this, you are where you're supposed to be. And that it all just felt right. It was one of, the greatest days of my life, aside from, my children being born, marrying my husband, and going on home and family. Like, there's certain milestones in your life and moments that you will never forget. And I have since gone on there, but not in person. I've done 2 remote segments with Good Morning America, and they are so lovely. But to have this moment in Times Square, in the greatest city in the entire world, with the career that I've worked so hard at for so long, creating a product that I truly love and stand by, it was magic.
Well, let's talk about your book. It's called Everyday Celebrations. Tell people what it's about.
Sure. Yeah. I have it. I can show you. I should send you one. Will you send me your information? I'll send you one.
I have an image of it here. I have an image of it here. I don't have the book. I just have an image here.
Oh, I'm going to send you one. After this, you'll send me your best address. Okay.
Okay.
And
All right. All right.
So Everyday Celebrations, again, all encompassing of really why I do what I do. And we talked about all of those things. It's really centered around creating community, strong community bonds, and that can be family, that can be friends, that can be neighbors. Family is really, in my opinion, what you create. And for me, a lot of my family is blood, but I don't think everybody's given that gift in life. So I think that you can create those things. And so with Everyday Celebrations, there's 5 chapters, and there's different things there's a bunch of themes within those chapters, but there's like the overarching thing that we're celebrating. So family, friends, sports, seasons. Why am I forgetting one? Family, friends, sports, seasons. I swear I wrote this book. And weeknight meals. Oh my gosh. Weeknight meals. And the reason for the weeknight meals is, so one of the things that I try to do, I like to find the things, and I have a good example of this, but I like to find the things that we sort of have this stigma on. Like, we get stressed about weeknight meals. We get stressed about our kids making messes. So certain things that I think carry this heavy weight on us, I like to sort of find the antithesis to that, like remove that and fill it with something better. So celebrating weeknight meals, because for me, weeknight meals are the foundation for everything I do. My mom always had us at the dinner table, always. And my dad, when he was working and they had no money, he would come home for dinner, and because she was like, you need to come eat with your girls. And this is like, us being like my kids' age, right? Like 9 and 5. He would come home from work, and this is when this is in the 80s, you couldn't work from home. And he would go back to work and work till 10, 11 o'clock at night. But he was home for dinner. And it wasn't it wasn't a question. It wasn't anything that was like, oh, well, I have this. It was like, no, you're home for dinner. And so I think and me personally, believe me, I'm far from perfect. There are many nights where I'm like, I don't want to make dinner. And that's okay. That's why I have Takeout Thursday in here. I think we all have to give ourselves a little bit of a break when it comes to the sort of like forced thought of like, okay, I know I need to make dinner. It's like, how about we celebrate eating dinner together, but we get dinner as like a takeout one day a week. So this book, so having the weeknight meals, and then of course celebrating family, one of those big things is creating traditions and celebrating traditions. And if if your family, you don't know some of your traditions, dig. There's so many ways to dig now. It's like your family, I didn't know my family, let's say, was from India, and like now I want to Indian food or something like that. Like you can do all of these things to find out your heritage and find connections to it. And so, and then celebrating friendship. My friends, I couldn't get through life without my friends. I've always been very close with my family, but I have always been very, very close with friends. I think friends are totally undervalued and underrated, and it should be celebrated. And then sports, I did this video for the Great American Community about tailgating, and I'm like, listen, I love sports. I'm here for the food. And that's why I love sports so much, because it really is. It gathers people together. And listen, that's great to me. I've met so many mom friends gathering through my kids' sports. And then, of course, celebrating seasons. Being from Michigan, I think, if I were to live anywhere else besides where I live now, it'd have to be somewhere with seasons. So really, that's the idea of the book. And having the little themes within those overarching, celebrations, there's a bunch of themes within there. And those themes give you ideas. And really the idea of the book is to encourage you to spend time together, try to make it foolproof, and to try to give you some purpose for these little celebrations. So, maybe celebrating that your son has, for instance, a test that he's worked really, really hard for, and celebrating him before he even goes to take the test. And what I mean by that is my son has spelling tests now on Fridays, and he works so hard at these spelling tests. He's gotten 100% on each test this year, and he has a goal to get 100% for the rest of the year. I'm like, okay, it's a big goal, but it's a goal for him. And I celebrate him before he gets his test, because I celebrate the hard work. So Friday mornings, it's this special breakfast that I know, like, and I'll leave him a little note, like, you're doing great, whatever it is. And these things don't have to be big. It's all about everyday celebrations, are about small moments, and then taking things that are sort of like life's everyday things, for instance, like oatmeal, and elevating it so that it feels celebratory. So you can make some overnight oats, but you could also put a little bit of brown sugar on the top, pop them in the oven, and caramelize them. And then you have bruleed banana oatmeal. And it's like those little things that elevate something that is just your everyday item. So that's really the heart and soul of the book. And there's lots of stories in there. As you can tell, I'm not a loss for words. But I have a lot of my family stories in there. I have some family recipes in there. And it's really, I really felt like I gave birth to another child. This book it has my whole heart. I put many hours into this book. And really the ultimate goal is that someone is going to read it and feel inspired and spend time with people they love. And really, that's the goal.
Well, I got to tell you, everyone deserves a mom like you. I got to tell you, because I'm telling you, if everyone did that kind of stuff for their kids, to appreciate the hard work they do in school, I think we'd have more kids graduating from school.
And it's just appreciating the hard work. And I think, and truly, if someone is listening to this, and whether you are a parent, an aunt, a friend, a grandparent, whatever, give this book to somebody who is a parent. And it can help give them little ideas, little things, and help them create little traditions in their house. I'll give you a small example. And I know, like I said, I talk a lot. But on Wednesdays, my grandpa worked half days at the store. So on Wednesdays, my grandpa would come home, and he would make his recipe for spaghetti and meatballs. And my dad would sit down with his big family, and they would have pasta. My dad, who knows if the story is true or not, but he says he didn't know that people didn't eat pasta on Wednesdays until he went to college. He was like, I went to college, and I was like, I thought everybody ate pasta on Wednesdays. So that's why I have a Pasta Wednesdays chapter, because I love the tradition of having a theme. People do Taco Tuesdays all the time. But having a theme on these different days. I have Making Messes Monday, because I want to take that sort of that sort of like bad, stop making a mess, and instead encouraging a space to have mess success and allow kids to have creative freedom in a way that's going to make you not lose your mind. having those little keys for mess success and having a tradition of every Wednesday, we know we're going to have pasta. Every Tuesday, and you don't have to do this every single day of the week. You could pick one day. And so that for me, like, we eat pasta on Wednesdays. And it's this fun thing that, like, maybe it's just a comfort food. Maybe it's just buttered noodles and Parmesan. Or maybe I really want to experiment and make my own homemade pasta, which I have a recipe for in the book too.
Now, who doesn't eat pasta on Wednesday? I've never heard of that.
I mean, I know, who are these people?
Yeah. Yeah. Now, in this book, are these recipes, are they easy for a novice cook and baker to do? Are they?
I wanted to have some things because I do know that a lot of people who follow my content are very into food and foodies. So I wanted to put some things in there that were going to have them want to try, meaning like a blackberry curd or a meringue or something of that nature that was maybe a little bit more advanced. However, then I also have like homemade granola bars or like these chicken kebabs that are like literally the easiest thing that anybody can make because you just marinate them and then pop them on the grill. So there's a huge range. I have a lot of healthy food in here too, like veggie forward dishes. And even like one of my weeknight meals is a sheet pan nacho, but it's loaded with veggies. So it's a way to get your kids like, oh, it's nachos, but it's like there's tons of veggies in there, and it's a good way to kind of get them excited and introduced to those flavors. And I will say, I arguably have one of the best recipes for nachos because instead of just like the sauce that you or the cheese that you sprinkle on, I have a cheese sauce and you drizzle it on, and then you pop it in the oven to like bring it all together. And it's that sauce that doesn't like when you eat nachos and you pick one up and then you pick up 12 because the cheese
yeah.
This you will get one with like gooey luscious cheese and like all the toppings. You won't go back.
So you don't have to dip these nachos. It's already on there.
It's already all on one big sheet pan. Best.
Now, how about the DIY crafts in the book? Can a beginner handle those?
Absolutely, yes. I think the majority of the crafts in the book are easy. They're more crafty than like, let's say, DIY building type of stuff. And most of the DIYs, if not all, are very geared towards the theme that I'm going with. So, for instance, I have a fall DIY where I actually take an old shirt and I turn it into little drink sleeves and little coasters. And then it goes with the theme of fall sightseeing. I have my pumpkin spice latte recipe in there that I just did on Good Morning America too from the book. And a recipe for little cookies that have the different colors of the season, and you can make them into leaves. That has a DIY element to it. But the DIY part of that chapter is essentially extremely easy. Most of the DIYs are geared towards entertaining. In like, for instance, in my friendship chapter, though, the DIY is geared towards giving a gift. So they all are within the
okay.
And it's something that anybody can do. And I try to make them not super complex because when it comes to food, I think people are really up for making complex food because food is so the norm now. Like we watch all these networks that have all these shows and they do all these crazy things. And Home and Family was really the only show that did DIYs. And they do some stuff on like an HGTV, for instance, but they like build stuff, and I'm like, I'm not going to build on like a Tuesday for me. Like that's just not in my wheelhouse for my daily life. But if it's like maybe a Halloween decoration, I might build it. But, for the everyday celebration, it's about having some things that feel everyday. Like I can make a candle for my friend who, whose parent just died and having this like little candle that smells so lovely with a little note. It's these little things that it's that effort that you do that's different. And there's the whole point of DIYing and making food and doing things from scratch is showing effort and intention. And if you fail at making homemade pasta, the best part is one, the story with it, but the intent behind it. You're intending to give this to somebody. You're intending to learn something. There's always the intent. And that is what makes making things from scratch so important. And that's where you see it, the trickle down effect in your happiness in life. Like you said, if everybody would just celebrate these things with their kids, the world would be a much happier place. I agree. I think if people started making things with their hands, the world would be a much better place too, because we live in this world where everything's out here, right? We put on helmets and we live in another universe. I'm like, how about we touch things in our real life like a book and open it, and we make a recipe with our hands, and then we eat it. Back to basics. This is not hard, and that's what I believe in.
Now, you mentioned pasta. I've always wanted to make my own pasta, but I don't have a pasta maker. Do you need a pasta maker to make pasta?
So not really. So in my book, I will say this is the one thing that I did troubleshoot in a way that I think is easy for people who maybe do have some of those things in their kitchen. I make my pasta in a food processor. It's very sacrilegious to the Italians. You could do it by hand. You really, really could. I do it in the food processor, and I swear it's not only better, but it's easier.
Wait, you do it in a food rather than a mixer?
I do it.
Really?
Most people do it by hand. They do like the
flour.
Most
people do it by hand. Yeah.
I do it all in a food processor.
Oh.
I have it on my. I think I have my Instagram. I know I have it on my TikTok. If you want to link it, but I can send it to you. But I do have the full tutorial out there.
Well, wait. Can you make like cookie dough in a food processor rather than?
It depends on the cookie dough. It depends on the cookie dough. Yeah, like I usually do. I do probably all my scone recipes are in a food processor. I do my pie crust in a food processor.
Oh,
I do all my pestos in a food processor. Like I said, all the Italians are like pointing their fingers and mad at me because like, yep. I would say the food processor is one of my all-time favorite kitchen utensils or
that's interesting.
Whatever. No, I use the stand mixer for pizza, but I don't use it for pasta. I use the stand mixer, the attachment for the stand mixer when I'm rolling out pasta. So I will say that is what is expensive. So let's say you make your pasta dough either in the food processor or you make it with your hands. And when you're ready to roll it out, you technically can roll it out with a rolling pin. You just got to be prepared for a workout because you need that to be as thin so that you can see your hand through it. You just need it to get thin, and then you can cut it. You absolutely can. Or you can get one of the sheets that or the like little machines that roll it, and you just do sheets, and then you can cut it. Or you can get the one that goes to the stand mixer, and it has all the attachments, so it'll roll it out, and it does the process of rolling out. So whenever you're doing that, you'll start on one sort of number. I think it's the lowest number is the thickest, and then you'll have to roll it through a few times, and you go to the higher number. Let's say you go all the way up to number 8, and then that's what's going to create a thin sheet, and that's what you really ultimately want. And then, there is a name for a pasta maker. I never ever have the book. I never ever say it right. There's a name for pasta maker in Italian. It's like, it's hard to pronounce because it's like SG Svigliani or something like that. It's like SGO whatever. It's a weird name, and I have the hardest time pronouncing it. But there is an actual rolling pin, and it's like probably the size of me. It's like a huge rolling pin that they use when they make pasta. So there is a technical like way of that they do it in like sort of the old school Italian places.
Now, after you get it rolled to where it's paper thin, do you have to let it dry?
No, not my recipe.
Really?
So there's different ways of making pasta. The one that I have is an egg pasta. I find this to be the one I make the most in terms of being homemade, and so that's made with a 00 flour, which is super important. It's an Italian soft wheat flour. It's really light, but I add eggs to it. If you wanted to do the flour if you want to do the pasta that you dry out, that's with there's like a durum wheat that you can use, and oh my gosh, I'm blanking on it. Oh my gosh, why can I not think of what it's called? My grandpa's like rolling over in his grave right now. I have it at the tip of my tongue. Anyways, it's a type of grain, and it's used with all the dry pastas, and it's literally like that and water, and that you can create the dried pasta. So the egg pasta, you can dry it out, but you can use it right away.
You can use it right away. You can boil it right away. Oh, okay. Okay.
I'm gonna think of this, and I'm gonna send you an Instagram message and be like, "That was what I was thinking of." And my brain just went blank on what it's called. I can see it. Oh, okay.
Oh, that's all right. Gosh. Now I have a friend. I have a friend who baked bread over the weekend, and she told me to ask you if there are any bread recipes in your book.
There are not.
No, there are not. Okay.
There are not. No, I have, I do a lot of quick breads, but to be honest with you, I don't make a lot of breads homemade. I
Okay.
really don't.
Okay.
I do pizza, but I don't do a lot of homemade breads, and I don't really know why. I think my mom always had that bread maker, but no, I guess I don't know why. I think everyone did it during lockdown, and
Yeah.
I think I never hopped on that bandwagon. Keeping like my own, yeast mixture and all that stuff. I'm like, oh, I'd
Yeah.
rather make a donut. I think and maybe that's just because I have such a big, I love bread, but I have a sweet
Uh-huh.
tooth. So if I'm gonna make something and put my energy into it, it's either gonna
Well,
be pizza or pasta, but I'm gonna bake like
now
donuts.
speaking of donuts, do you use yeast in donuts or do you
You
use
can.
baking powder or what?
So there's my grandpa used to do a recipe at his store, and it was not a yeast donut. It was a cake donut, which are made with like a buttermilk. And some people, I would say either a baking powder, baking soda, depends on the recipe, but it has
Hmm.
to have that, leavening and acidity.
Hmm.
With that though, he did have a donut maker, so it was a little bit easier for when you do a buttermilk based donut, there's a process, it gets sticky. So you have to put it in the fridge and you have to, when you punch them out, everything has to be cold. There's like this process because if it gets too wet, it's too hard to work with. However, I probably like a cake donut versus a yeasted donut better, but the yeasted donuts are definitely easier in my humble opinion to work with. So when you do your yeasted donut, it's a very similar process to making bread. I mean, I've made focaccia a number of times, in my life because I love anything that's completely drowning in olive oil. But but for the donuts, it's similar to making for me probably a bread, but like for making donuts, I mean, sorry, for making pizza. It's letting it
Pizza.
rise. Same as like when you
Okay.
make cinnamon rolls, you're letting
Hmm.
your yeast rise a couple times, you're doing all those types of things, and then you're punching them out, and then you fry them. So I've
Hmm.
definitely done my share of yeasted, donuts,
Hmm.
um, and what I do the easiest way for me to make donuts, and I have this recipe on my website. I wonder if I can pull this up for you. Um, and, it's an Italian donut that is fried, but it's almost like when you make, like, puff pastries.
Uh-huh.
Um, and it's sort of the same process, where you have the sort of like warm mixture that you add eggs to,
Hmm.
and yeah. So it's. I'll have to send you that
All
recipe
right.
too. I'm
All
trying to.
right.
I'll see. It's on my website somewhere.
All right. Now,
Um,
where can people buy your book?
You can buy it. Actually, the easiest way to buy it is if you go to my website, go to
Okay.
fromscratchwithmaria.com, and I have a bunch of links on there that will take you to places that are most convenient for you.
Hmm.
Um, 95% of the time, I think Amazon is
Amazon. Yeah.
easiest, but I do encourage people to call their local bookstores and try to buy locally if you can.
Hmm.
There's a number of really great. I live in Manhattan Beach, and there's a number of really great bookstores that have started to carry mine. One's called Tabula Rasa, one's called Waterleaf, and they've supported me. Waterleaf did my very first book signing, so they were so lovely. So if you can support your local bookstores,
Hmm.
please do. And if they don't have the book, you can always tell them, and they can get the book.
Hmm.
But yeah, so go to my website. The information on the quickest and easiest way is going to be on
All
there.
right. Is it in big bookstores like Barnes and Nobles?
It
Is it?
should be, yeah. I know it's
Yeah.
on Barnes& and Noble online.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
my friend in South Carolina sent me a photo, so I know she had one in her bookstore or the one there. Some libraries have them, things like
Okay.
that. So yeah,
All right. All
yeah,
right. All right. Now let's talk about the Great American Community app. Your show that you host is called Everyday Celebrations, just like your book.
yep.
How did this come about? How did you get asked to be involved in this?
Well, so Bill, obviously is created this full, and what I call it is like a basically a viewer experience, right? It's this
Hmm.
all-encompassing world that is being created for uplifting, happy content.
Hmm.
And so with that, I think he's really hitting the nail on the head by adding lifestyle content in. And so because I think that's really like a lot of people are missing that in their content. So um, this came about because Bill was starting this, and Tracy, who was the old executive producer of Home and Family, she had called me up, and they were putting together this app of lifestyle content. And, they approached home and family people, and rightly so, because we not only already have the relationship, but we know how to create content for, TV, even though this is digital, same thing. And it's content that we love. So I had to call Tracy. She knew I'd never say no to her about anything. I love her so much. And yeah, it was just kind of took off there. And, the way that the sort of creative went for mine, I think was very obvious. It's very similar content that I created when I was on Home and Family. It's very similar content to what is in my book. And it's, very much the through line for why I do what I like to do. This is all very genuine, authentic content that resonates with me. And I wouldn't put anything out there that I didn't think was good. And that I didn't think people, could find useful. Like, I think why waste time on something like that? So there's so many ways to spread content out. So it's like, why this? Is because I believe in it. I believe in Bill, and I believe in Tracy, and I believe in creating this content that I think will really inspire people. And I love that we have a lot of new faces in there that weren't on Home and Family, because I think it brings, like seeing Jill Wagner's house and doing all those, like that's awesome. I love that. And I also love that, Cameron and Debbie were the two lead hosts of the show, but they didn't always get to do their creative. They were always talking to us. So I love seeing the creative behind Cameron and Debbie. I think that's cool. I think it's fun to see their life. I love seeing like Debbie's stuff in Greece, and all of that. I just think it's really good content. And so it was an easy yes from me.
Now tell me what your show is about.
So my show is really about everyday celebrations and the type of stuff that we've been talking about. It's about
things that are in your book, right?
Some of the things are in my book, some things are not.
Okay.
And like, for instance, I that we're looking at this wreath right here that was not in my book. And the picnic, although I have picnic tips in my book, that specific picnic is not, but it's a way that I'm able to showcase the tips from my book, but show how to do that in a seasonal aspect. So like the tailgate thing, those are tips from my book and some of the DIYs from my book. So this was a really great way to sort of bring the book to life. But also, add in stuff that I'm doing normally. Like the one is coming up about my trip to Michigan and going to the apple orchards with my mom. I think fun. That I can't remember the date that goes up, but soon. And so one of the things that was important to me, and this is why I've always loved working with Bill and Tracy, is because they are such advocates for creative freedom when it comes to talent. Because I think a lot of talent in other networks, people just show up and do their part and do what they're told. Whereas in my experience with people like Bill and Tracy, we, as people who are on camera talent, have always had voices. And I think people don't understand how rare that actually is in this industry to have a voice. Because usually you're being told what to say. And that's not the case here. But being a creator and having creative freedom, I had said I would love to be able to create content in Michigan. It's been a dream of mine ever since I got into the lifestyle space to create content showcasing the state that I love probably more than anything else. And they're like, yes, absolutely, that's perfect. And so just having the ability to send over ideas that I feel passionate about and that I really would love to showcase. And I think, I'd love to be able to showcase things that are important to me. Larissa does that, with animals. And I think for us in the DIY and crafting and cooking world, it's to inspire people to gather together. For me, it's showing the beauty of Michigan and showing the importance of family and all of that.
Great. Now, what days a week are your new episodes released?
I'm Wednesday and Friday.
Wednesday and Friday, people can tune in for new episodes of yours. Okay. Yeah. And how these episodes aren't real long. About how long is the average length of these videos?
So, Chad, listen.
What?
One of my, if you haven't noticed already, one of my biggest problems is that I can talk a lot. So, some of mine, I'll send them over and they'll be like 7 minutes and they're like, Maria, we might need to cut something out of here. I'm like, but no, really, I'm
Oh,
talking about
they don't want them that long, really?
because people, even when we did our segments on Home and Family,
Mm-hmm.
7 to 9 minutes is a long segment.
Right.
So, and people lose their interest. And even if you're watching a food show, the recipe itself doesn't usually take 9 minutes.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
I can just talk a lot. And they're like, okay, we might have to, this has to be a little more concise. So some of them, I would say they're anywhere from 3 minutes. Mine don't go under 3 minutes, but 3 minutes to, let's say 10. They're rarely over 10 minutes.
Okay.
And I think that's like a really good sweet spot, especially for digital content, because this isn't a full show. You know, if we were watching a Home and Family show, you get those segments throughout the show. So you're sitting for an hour committed to this content. Whereas like when you go on here, you click on one, you're like, oh, I'm not going to watch Maria make pasta for 30 minutes. Like you better have something else in there. You know, it's like if you're going to watch Maria for 30 minutes, there better be 3 recipes and a DIY. So it's like, you know, get it together. But yeah, so that's really, they're anywhere from like, let's call it 3 to 10 minutes.
Okay. Now, do you film these with your phone or did the network give you professional equipment to film these with?
Well, some of mine I've done on my phone, but because I create content on my own outside of this, I use a higher quality camera.
So you already
and
have the equipment.
I have lights, I have kind of all that stuff.
Okay.
But they really wanted this to feel real. So they're like, use what you have, use your phone if you got it. And you know, they didn't ask for us to have 2 shots. They didn't ask to have any of these things. They just wanted us to create content that felt authentic to us. And this is just, you know, the way I am creating content in a way that I would want to watch content. And so I like to see an overhead shot of recipes. I like to see, you know, the person talking instead of just an overhead shot. So I try to do a mix of things that I would want to watch as a viewer.
Okay. Now, you mentioned DIY stuff. You mentioned there's a picture of the door wreath there, and you have you have one segment on there where you're making Christmas candles.
Yep.
There's cooking videos where you're making pasta and soup. Now, what about baking? Are you going to be doing any baking, or is Emily Hutchinson going to be doing all that?
Oh, I will be baking too.
Okay.
And I'm trying to think. I am baking. Well, I'm making. This isn't. It's a sweet, but it's not necessarily baking. I'm making this. It's called reindeer food. It's sort of like an elevated version of like what we call the puppy chow in the Midwest. I think other people call it Muddy Buddies. So that's a sweet treat that's coming up. Today I'm actually going to be filming gingerbread.
No, wait, hold on. The reindeer food, is that the white chocolate thing?
No, mine's different.
Yours is different. Oh, okay.
You're thinking of the right thing.
Oh, okay.
Mine is a little bit different because and there's a story with it that I do tell in the sort of segment or in the, you know, what I'm doing the recipe about why the recipe that I'm creating is important and why it's important to celebrate friendship and some traditions there with friendship. It's a recipe that I'm sharing that with my friends. And I show some pictures of my group of friends and stuff like that and tell a really, you know, like nice story about why this recipe in particular was important to us. And I changed it up a little bit to make it like really festive for Christmas.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But I have, like I said, gingerbread scones. I have a quick bread coming up. Yeah, stuff like that. So I think, you know, when it comes to my content, I think because I do love to do so many different things. You know, and we're just starting out. So it's like, well, we got to get a DIY. We can get some cooking. We can do lifestyle tips. We can do all these things. But the baking will be coming.
I have a feeling you're never going to run out of ideas.
You know, the day I run out of ideas is the day I die. Because I will be doing this until I am 1,000 years old and my kids are going to be like, okay, what else is she doing today?
Now, do you prefer to cook or to bake?
I love them both for different reasons. I really do. I think if someone put a gun to my head and said I had to choose between the two, God, I mean, if I had to choose, which is I know you didn't ask that question, but I'm putting myself on the spot. I would say I'd probably say cooking, mostly because if you were to ask me that like maybe 5 years ago even, I probably would have said baking. But as I've gotten older, I've really created I've learned about the appreciation of food and health. And I think as I've gotten older, like I said, I got my eyes checked today and I'm like, oh my God, I need glasses. So as I've gotten older, I've really become a little bit more health conscious, and being friends with Cameron Matheson, that will happen too, because he's very health conscious.
Yeah.
I truly love to bake, and I have the biggest sweet tooth.
Mhm.
So it takes everything in me to have like self-control around sweets.
Uh-huh.
And I think because I have such fond memories of baking with my mom, that's also why.
Mhm.
Um, but I think I've gained a wellness appreciation when it comes to food, and an
Mm.
overall like wellness appreciation,
Yeah.
and having a different perspective of food instead of like, what is this? How is this affecting my body? And so all of those things. So as I've gotten older, I think my cooking game has gotten a little bit more elevated.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Because cooking and baking are completely two different things. I mean, some
They really
people
are.
can cook, but they can't bake, and others can bake,
Yeah,
but they can't cook.
correct.
They're, yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Baking is like a science. It's like an exact science. I mean, you have
Oh
to
yeah.
know the exact measurements of everything, and cooking, you can just kind of throw everything together and whatever, you know?
Oh, I drive my mom crazy. Someone who's very structured. We'll be baking, and I'm like, "Oh, let's have this." She's like, "No." I'm like, "Yeah, it'll be fine. Let's see what happens."
Yeah. Now you mentioned you have a couple kids, two sons. Here's one of them helping you bake something. Now,
Yeah,
do
that was
they?
actually, for Jen Lily's, Christmas Isn't Canceled.
Oh, wait, yeah,
Yeah, so she
yeah.
sent us, this whole kit, and we made one of the recipes from the kit, but that is my homemade marshmallow recipe.
Yeah, okay. Now, do they enjoy helping you in the kitchen?
They love
They
to
love
be
it.
in the kitchen. They do. I would say, I mean, both kids do. I think my baby, who you're seeing right here, this is JJ. He's gonna be 5 next week. I think he's a creative mindset like me. His mind is definitely more imaginative, and like when he plays in the imaginary. And my oldest son is very linear, like A plus B equals C. And he loves to help because he likes to spend time together, and he loves to do it. And he is creative. But my baby is sort of like A A plus B might equal C, but what happens if we put like a G in there? Like, he's like me. He's like, "Let's see what happens." And, a little bit more in, like, that imaginative mindset.
Mhm. Now, do they know that you're famous?
Well, I would not say that I'm famous.
Oh, yeah, you are. Yeah, you are.
Oh my gosh, no. I think my oldest son, for him, I don't think he totally like, he sees the videos that I do, but, like, because I don't go to a set anymore on a
Mhm,
regular basis,
mhm.
so when I do a lot of, like, different news channels and things like that, and, when I did Good Morning America, last week, I had to be on camera at 4:30 in the morning, so they slept at their cousin's house so that I didn't have to wake them up at 3 in the morning by mistake, just, like, putting lights up and making noise and all of that. So he, like, gets it, but he doesn't totally get it because he used to come on set with me. And he loved coming on set.
Yeah.
But my baby doesn't. I don't think either one of them totally gets it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Now you mentioned Christmas is not canceled, and you're doing something next month, right, for
Yeah.
Christmas University, right? Talk a little bit about that.
Yes, and I love one of my favorite humans on the planet is Jen Lilly. I
Mhm.
mean, she's just a ray of sunshine, and what she does and her purpose in life is really magnificent. So, yeah, so when her and I have become friends through obviously working with the same networks, and she was so sweet when I sent her my book. She was like, "Oh my gosh, we need you to cooking and doing all this stuff for Christmas Isn't Canceled." And so she dug through the book and she picked out a recipe that she's like, well, selfishly, I just want you to make this recipe so I can learn how to do it. So I'm going to be doing my pizza recipe, but the fall pizza in the book, which, like I said, I will send to you. And it's a pumpkin pizza. And so instead of like a tomato sauce on there, I create a pumpkin base that is sort of like the sauce and put a bunch of
Really?
different toppings on it.
Really?
And I will say, like, I know there's so many people who pizza is their career and they've like really created fantastic pizza recipes.
Mhm.
My pizza recipe is pretty good, so I will say it's arguably pretty good. But yeah, so I'll be doing. I and her and I, we haven't worked through how it's stepped out just yet, but what she's doing is cool because people can watch and ask questions and all of those things. So I'll be making a nice fall pizza on
A
there.
pumpkin pizza.
Oh
That is
yeah,
gonna
with
be
a
interesting.
pumpkin
Wow.
seed pesto.
Wow. Okay.
It sounds fancy, but it's actually doable.
So you don't put cheese on it, I imagine, right? You put cheese on top
Oh,
of the pumpkin?
yep.
Do you really?
Oh, yeah. It's not sweet.
Wow.
It's not a
Okay.
sweet pumpkin.
Okay.
It's a savory pumpkin.
Okay.
Chad, you're gonna have to watch it.
I'm gonna I'm gonna have to check that out. Yeah, definitely. Now, here's a segment you did with your kids on DIY picnic ideas. Do they enjoy making these videos with you?
They do. Actually, they
Yeah.
do. I know. There's if they fight me on anything, like if they say they don't want to do it, I don't make them do it. So that's
Yeah.
why, like, for instance, you saw JJ in that one video.
Uh-huh.
That we were filming that in Michigan, and my oldest son Grant was like, "No, I want to go play with my friends." So he wouldn't play with his friends. If
Yeah.
they ever say they don't want to do something, I don't make them do it.
Yeah.
And I think as Grant's gotten older, you see less of him and more of JJ because JJ is really in that creative space. And who knows that this might be something JJ loves to do, and he becomes a chef. Or Grant, who's my older one, he might become a chef. Like you just never know how the ebb and flow of life.
Hmm.
But Grant is very much like he's also busier. Grant plays soccer and baseball and football, and he's always off doing like all these things. And JJ is still at that nice, like kind of yummy age where he's still like with me. And so he truly likes to create. There's one of him and I for Great American Community coming up for a Thanksgiving one, and he's so tired. And you'll see, and I even say it in the video. And I'm like, "Are you tired?" Because he's rubbing his eyes, but I could not pull him away. He's like, "No, I want to do this." Like, don't make me sleep. I was gonna say like we can do this later. You can nap, but because I had everything out, he was so invested in what we were doing that he's like, I'm committed to this. I want to do it.
Well,
He's
they always
rubbing his eyes.
they, they
Oh,
always look like they're having a good time. The one I remember in this video, the one was dancing. He was
he's always dancing. Oh my gosh. And I think that even if you don't see creativity in your children, like I said, my oldest one might not be as creative, but I think it's like encouraging their brains to think creatively is
Mhm,
important.
mhm, mhm. Now here they are. This was a couple of years ago on Halloween. Do they have their Halloween costumes picked out for this year?
My baby is going to be a Power Ranger. His grandma took him to Target and he picked it out. And I was like, oh, thank God. Now I don't have to think about it. And he's super into it. That's what he wants to be. My oldest son, he is bouncing between he's into football right now. He just started football this year. So he thinks he might be a football player. He was a Star Wars character last year. He was Mandalorian. And he was like, I really like Mandalorian. Maybe I'll just do that again this year. Again, like my oldest is very much like, sports and things. And then my baby's like creative. So that's what the
Do,
plan is.
do you have favorite crafts that you like to make for Halloween?
For Halloween, I would say, I mean, for Halloween, I will say my favorite things to make is food, mostly because it is the treats. And I
Mhm.
usually like to I think Halloween's I am not like a gory Halloween person. I am like
Mhm.
a happy Halloween person. I'm like, I don't want to eat things that look like witches' fingers or blood. Like, I want to eat things that like are like in the shape of like a pumpkin or something like that. So
Uh-huh.
I'll probably do actually there's this thing that's trending right now. And my friend who does charcuterie boards as her social media inspired me to do this. It's like a pumpkin that's like pumpkin shaped, but it's brie and it's wrapped with like a puff pastry, and you like actually put like a twine around it, like a baker's twine around it, bake it, and it comes out looking like a pumpkin.
Oh
So like stuff
wow.
like that, yeah, stuff like that. I like making that type of stuff. Themed food is fun, so I
Mhm.
will definitely put together. We do a big Halloween on our street. We sell our neighborhood is very close, and we go all out. And so everybody will be dressed up and together, and it's really fun.
Do you ever host Halloween parties?
We, my neighbor and I, we usually host between our houses. So we have kids that
Yeah.
are our oldest, my oldest son and her youngest son are the same age, and so we have a very busy street on Halloween. So we will. Last year we got a DJ and we had a bartender, and this year we're getting the taco truck because we made a bunch of food last year, and then we're like, well, I'll do a dessert table. Let's do a taco truck, and so and we have like hundreds of people on our street. So
Wow.
it's pretty big. We just hosted our kids go to a Catholic school. So her and I hosted what they call a home mass at our house too. So we hosted like the mom's Christmas ornament exchange the year before that. So we tend to host. It's fun to have a partner in crime too, to have somebody to do it with, and she likes to host stuff too.
Yeah. Now here you mentioned the tailgating video you did that's on the Great American Community app. Now you gave a tip on this. I learned something. You gave a tip to not to put ice in the bottom of your cooler, but to put frozen water bottles instead, then put the food on top. And then when the water melts, you can drink the water. I never thought of that. That's awesome.
You know who I actually learned that from? Amazon. Amazon used to send us because I would always do Amazon Fresh for food to order. Like when I'm super busy and I don't have time to go to the grocery store, I would order on Amazon or I would order Instacart. Amazon doesn't do this anymore, but they used to. They, instead of ice packs, they would put frozen water bottles in, and I didn't even order water bottles. It was just their ice. And I was
really?
This is smart.
Yeah.
That was where I got it from.
Oh.
So I've never gone back. And so for all of my kids' sports stuff, I always have water bottles in the freezer, and then we pop them out, and then we are able to take even to the beach. It's a good idea too.
Yeah. Yeah, that is an awesome idea. Yeah, I love that. Yeah. Oh, we're running long here. I had some questions for you. How much time you have?
I have maybe another 10.
All right. I'll skip these questions.
Oh, okay.
I don't want to keep
it. No, that's okay. I could do 10 to 15 probably. I have the incoming traffic on my phone.
All right, I'll do a couple of questions. These have nothing to do with the app or anything. These are just you. What's your favorite food to eat? What'd you say? Oh, wait, your sound cut out. Cookies?
Oh, sorry. Yes, cookies.
Cookies.
Oh, you know why? Because it connected to my phone. Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
I would say my number one food, favorite food of all time, cookies.
Cookies. Oh, okay. Okay.
Pasta's a close number 2.
Pasta's a close number 2. You have what's your favorite food to cook or to bake? Yeah.
Probably my grandpa's spaghetti and meatballs.
Spaghetti and meatballs. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. The holidays are coming up. What's your favorite Halloween candy?
Oh, I always make stuff. Like store-bought Halloween candy?
Store-bought stuff. Yeah.
I don't ever eat Halloween candy. I always eat stuff. No, I don't. I'm not a candy person. Okay. My dad will send me like a box of C's candy. I am a snob when it comes to desserts. So he'll send me this like a box of C's candy, and those I really like because they're like gourmet little candies. So that I like.
Okay. I was gonna ask you candy corn, yes or no. So it's like I take it's a no from you.
I used to really love candy corn. As I've gotten older, my body doesn't like it. I craft with it though. I'll use it in like a vase or something like that.
But you have to buy candy to give out to the trick-or-treaters, don't you?
Always.
Yeah. You don't eat any of it though, I take it.
Don't.
No.
I eat the fancy stuff. My dad is like such an Italian dad where he always likes to send us stuff for like any holiday, and he'll always send us like chocolates for Valentine's Day, and Halloween is obviously a sweet holiday, so he'll send us like my sister and I. By us, I mean my sister and I. He'll send us some candies for Halloween. Oh, it's really sweet.
Now, what's your favorite item to eat at Thanksgiving meal?
Stuffing.
Stuffing. That's mine too.
Yes, and it can be dressing, but my mom always made stuffing in the turkey.
In the turkey. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, you're not. Well, you're not supposed to put it in the turkey anymore, right?
No, because I guess you can get food poisoning. I'm like, listen, I've been eating this my whole life. I've never gotten food poisoning. Yeah, but I get it. But I guess dressing could be, the alternative.
Yeah. My mom always put it in the turkey too.
Always.
Yeah. All right. What's your favorite Christmas cookie?
Biscotti. My mom always made biscotti. It's basically an Italian, almost like it looks like a little cookie stick. I would say that that's.
Oh, I know what you mean. Yes. Okay, I know what you mean.
And I make them because I love them so much. We only used to make them around the holidays, but I make them a lot more frequently now. But like a traditional holiday cookie, I would say I love a good gingerbread. I love gingerbread.
Oh, gingerbread. Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Well, Maria, this has been fun and it has been a pleasure getting to know you.
Well, thank you for having me. This was such a lovely chat.
Yes, this was. Now tell people, drop your social media handles so people can follow you.
You can find me at From Scratch with Maria on Instagram. And if you go to my website, fromscratchwithmaria.com, all of my information will be there.
Okay. And your website is
fromscratchwithmaria.com.
And you're also on YouTube.
Yep. Okay. And you can just look up From Scratch with Maria.
Okay.
If you go to my website will take you everywhere.
Great. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here and taking all this time.
Oh, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Yes, and thank you. Oh, and your show, once again, I'll say, drops on the community app every Wednesday and Friday on the Great American Community app. It's everyday celebrations. Yes. And chatters, thank you for being here. And until next time, you keep the faith, keep smiling, keep your friends close, and keep your great American family closer.